All right, welcome back. Goodman versus Gottlieb. I'm Jeff Goodman. He's Doug Gottlieb. We are on every single day for the rest of the season, Monday through Friday, 1 to 1:30 Eastern Time here on Stadium. Make sure you send us your videos, your questions, whatever, and I will make sure Doug doesn't duck any of your questions, I promise you. All right, Doug, hey, 5 more top 10 teams went down over the weekend. Everybody has lost other than North Carolina over the last week. So top 10 teams suffered 10 losses altogether in the past week. UConn and North Carolina were the only teams not to lose in the last 7 days. Houston has now lost 2 in a row after a 14-0 start. So here's the question that I posed to you, Doug. What was your biggest takeaway? What stood out the most, other than the overall, which is, again, nobody's that great at the top. We know that right now. But what one thing stood out the most over the last week to you?
I was really surprised that West Virginia beating Texas, just because that one did not feel like they had a lot of hope there. I do think it's that everybody really is beatable. I think that's surprising. It's not that, look, road games in conference play, as Houston has found out, and now you step up into a big boy conference, and this is what happens. There are no easy nights. Everybody has players, but it's really especially before the students are back. I'm surprised. I'm surprised that we don't have one team or 2 teams that are just dominating their leagues. So I think that's kind of my biggest takeaway. I mean, is that what we believe to be true is maybe more true than we ever could have thought. And what we've all believed to be true is, hey, man, there's no great teams. And it really is true. There's not that much separation. I probably was, in terms of losses, was as impressed with Kentucky as I would have been, as I am with some other teams' wins. Not that losing to A&M, okay, is a good thing. And obviously you give up, you're in the 90s, like you're playing way too fast. Your defense isn't good enough. But the fact that you have that amount of youth and you're that competitive in a road environment, to me says I'm still buying a team like Kentucky. And then the last part, sorry, I know I'm going along, is I am impressed with Carolina. Saw them in person. And you know me, okay? I'm a guy who on your Field of 68 show, like you're killing me. Like I don't think they're great. But I want you to think about this for a second. We're in January, and usually when Roy Williams would have national championship teams, they wouldn't start guarding anybody until March. Okay? North Carolina is top 5 in defensive efficiency in Ken Pop ratings. Okay? So
that's amazing.
And amazing. And the personnel is good, but it's not like you look at them like, man, they got some dogs over there. But they're really guarding. Okay, they're not fouling, and I think that's probably the most impressive part of the top 10 is that here's North Carolina known as a transition school. When they went to the portal and they brought in Harrison Ingram and they brought in what's his name from Notre Dame, like they brought in Cormac Ryan, right? They wanted shooting in space for Armando Bacot and guys that moved the ball and guys that were team players. They got all that. But I didn't know they were going to get this level of quality defense from both of them and a buy-in from their team. It's really impressive.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm kind of overall with you on everything you said. I'll go a little more specifics, and we're going to talk about this team later on in the show. Marquette. What the hell has happened to Marquette and Tyler Kolek for the last week? I didn't see this coming where they'd lose the way they've lost some of these games lately, losing at home like they did. Kolek has been unable to score. He still makes his team better, but he's really had trouble shooting the ball from 3 and finishing around the basket, missing some bunnies. So I think for me it's kind of Marquette because 3 weeks ago, Doug, I think all of us had Marquette as a Final Four contender. I'm not sure we had them as a national title contender, but certainly a Final Four contender. They are not playing anything close to that right now. So in terms of individual teams that have, and then TCU on the other end, I'll go with a negative and then a positive. TCU loses on a terrible flagrant one in Allen Fieldhouse. And I give Jamie Dixon a lot of credit because he got them to bounce back and they win 2 really good games against Oklahoma and against Houston at home that now put them on the right side of the bubble. If they go 0 for 2 there with their crappy non-conference schedule, which I still kind of rip on Jamie Dixon for, but maybe he knew what he was doing here a little bit, saying like all that matters is our Big 12 slate, right? Like if we finish in the top 5 in the Big 12 and we'll go get some confidence in the non-league, then that's all that's going to matter at the end of the day. That's going to get us in the tournament.
Yeah, I was surprised. Arizona losing to Wazoo surprised me. I just, again, it's not that a road loss in the Palouse is that surprising, but this Washington State team had done nothing to be impressive. Heck, how about, and this is not a ranked team, okay, but Arizona's lost 4 out of 8 after they look like world beaters to start the year. They're the Marquette of the West, right? Marquette of the West. And, Oklahoma was a surprise to start the year, and their non-conference was a little suspicious. They did beat Providence, who at the time was at full strength, a good team, beat them at home. But Oklahoma getting popped by TCU, by Kansas, is kind of shows they're more at the level than I thought they would be, probably the second to third tier in the Big 12 than where they were in the non-conference. Hey, how about last night? UCLA beats Washington. Like what? After losing by 90 to 44 to Utah, they come back home and beat Washington. Like all the goodwill Mike Hopkins had from beating Gonzaga is essentially gone because of that loss.
Yeah, no doubt. And getting back to your Arizona deal, they have struggled. And I keep going back to Kai Boswell. He's been awful in their 4 losses, Doug. Not bad, like awful. And I'm a big Kai Boswell fan. He was awesome in that game against Duke, that win at Cameron to start the season early on. And again, as I think it's fair to say, like as Kai Boswell goes, so does Arizona. And he can't play that poorly. Like he can have a mediocre game and they can still make up for it. But he can't. He went the goose egg. The goose egg in the loss to Wazoo. And all right, here's my question for you on the Cats. Which Cats, and I think I know the answer based on what you've said, which Cats are you more worried about, Doug? Arizona or Kentucky? Which Cats team are you taking, like come March? Are you on Kentucky and have you kind of jumped off the Arizona bandwagon a little bit?
I don't know if I was fully on the Arizona bandwagon. I was impressed by their toughness and their ability to defend earlier in the year, which felt like what was missing. But I'm more on the Kentucky bandwagon. Those freshmen are super competitive, super talented. They're starting to get some help inside in terms of interior scoring. So I'm more impressed there. Whereas I just don't think, like the big thing for Arizona, you mentioned Kai Boswell. I didn't think he was great this summer with Team USA. So I was surprised at how well he played in that Duke game. I just don't think they have a dude, right? And you're like, well, do you need that? Like, yes, because you get into a conference game, a conference tournament game, and especially an NCAA tournament game, and the house is on fire, and you need somebody who's got the bucket, who can put out the fire until everybody else relaxes. And I don't think Arizona has that guy, whereas I do think Kentucky has a couple of those guys. So I'm more into Kentucky than I am to Arizona in terms of stealing in March.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. Even with their youth, I feel like these dudes don't play young. Yeah, Reed Shepherd is a mature freshman. Dillingham has been much better in terms of his efficiency than I thought he'd be. All right, while we're on here, breaking news, Doug. I know how much you love the AP Top 25 poll. UConn is number 1 for the first time. Now, this is surprising. I'm going to give you a stat. First time since 2009 that I think UConn is number 1 in the regular season AP poll. I assume they finished number 1 in the postseason. I guess. I don't know. I don't even know if they do a postseason after you won it all anymore. But first time in almost 15 years. How crazy is that to think about that, right?
Yeah. It's crazy, especially considering, they haven't had Donovan Clingan. He gets hurt. And and they're figuring out how to play differently. And I do think it'll help them when he gets back. Especially, he's not a ball dominant guy, so I think it'll, assuming he comes back. But it's one of those like we can't sit here and say we don't really take the AP poll seriously, and then the AP poll has a number one. You're like, now we're taking it serious.
Right.
Here's why it does matter in recruiting on some level. The only thing that matters is, are you ranked and who's number one? And it's big for Danny because coming off a national championship,
they'll use it.
Yeah, losing, your top two players, losing your top two players, and now playing without your starting center, and you're still number one in the country. If that doesn't speak to what he's built in stores, I don't really know what does.
Yeah, kind of amazing what he's done. Again, obviously Calhoun did a hell of a job building it, and we've both been to stores and know how difficult a task that is. The other part of UConn that I continue to love, Doug, is this Rick Pitino, Danny Hurley tiff that keeps going on. It's the gift that keeps on giving. And Rick Pitino, among his other comments that he made about jumping in a river and dying after their loss to Creighton, and how the fact that he doesn't believe in moral victories, was another shot across the bow at the guy at stores. And he said, I don't yell at officials during the game. This is going to sound absolutely berserk. I think it's a form of cheating when you're trying to get calls in every play and cursing at the referees, inciting the crowd. Clearly a shot at one Dan Hurley without saying his name, Doug. How do you feel about this little battle going back and forth between Pitino and Danny Hurley?
Ultimate respect, okay? And if Danny's smart, and he is, he pretends like it doesn't exist, because for Danny now is number one
he
team.
Can't. No, he can't, Doug. There's no way he can pretend.
I understand, but as you know, Danny watches everything. So Danny, as you're watching this, let me help you. You're the defending national champion. You're number one in the country. Commenting on a middling team in the Big East, regardless of which they're coached by arguably the greatest modern day coach of all time in Rick Pitino. That's punching down. Don't punch down. Pitino's punching up. Okay? It's punching up. He's trying to manipulate the referees without openly manipulating the referees. Because the reality is, we all kind of know this, that doesn't help. You may think it helps him and maybe help him at home, but Danny's really hard to officiate, right? He just is, because there are guys that can't stand him, and they're like, look, I love the way his team plays. I love how he coaches. I don't like being MF'd up and down, whatever. Or he does that turn to the crowd and curse to them so the officials don't hear it. But like, look, let's also be honest. Like Rick Pitino, he's always been a guy. When he first, I don't know if you know the story, when he first got the job at Kentucky, his cursing could be heard so loud that they called him in and they're like, look, coach, like, we got to do something about this. So if you watch, he would do this. You mothers. Oh, no, he called the kid over under his breath or next to an official. So it ain't that he's not doing it. It's just you can't tell he's doing it.
Trust me, I've heard it in plenty of practices, Doug, when he's mic'd up in every practice for his voice, so he doesn't have to yell. So I hear it every practice. I mean, listen, these are two of the best coaches in the country right now.
Sure.
Let's be honest here. Like Rick Pitino, we've had on this pedestal, and he's earned it for a while. Dan Hurley has put himself on that with not just what he did this year at UConn, but if you look in the totality, what he's done in terms of building programs, right? Taking over at Wagner, turning them into a winner, which is a really, really hard job. Taking over at URI, rebuilding that thing and getting them going. And now doing it at UConn and taking it from where Kevin Ollie left it, which was a complete joke at that point. Let's be honest. Like, UConn was at the bottom of what it could be. I mean, they were finishing, fifth in the AAC at that point. And he's got them back to the top, not only, again, like you said, national title champions last year, but now with losing Sonogo, losing Jordan Hawkins, losing some of their other key pieces, kind of a brand new team for the most part, other than Tristan Newton and Alex Caravan, because they haven't had Klingon. And here you see the top 10, the new AP top 10. I personally have Purdue at 1, but honestly, at this point, it's splitting hairs. It doesn't matter. UConn, Purdue, Kansas. I actually, Purdue won, Kansas 2, UConn 3. Kansas beat UConn at Fog Allen barely earlier this year. But again, those three, there's very little disparity, as you said from the outset. Very little disparity from maybe 1 to 50, as little as it's ever been.
Well, I mean, just take Memphis, right? Memphis sitting there at number 10. Okay. They beat Tulsa on a buzzer shot, and then they beat somebody else last week, a league win on a buzzer shot.
UTSA barely beat them. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so if they lose those games, it's a completely different. Baylor, Oklahoma State had them dead to rights, led them late in regulation and in overtime. They lose those games, we look at them completely differently. I think Duke has a really high ceiling. Heck, I was impressed by Tennessee in how they came from behind to beat Georgia. Right? Georgia just stopped scoring. Tennessee just shut off the water and won a game on the road in the SEC in a packed building. So, but a lot of these are kind of close, surviving wins that if one shot goes in or doesn't go in, we look at them completely differently. I'm with you. I don't know about top 50, but I definitely think that there's that top tier of, I think, UConn, Kansas, Houston, et cetera. And that next tier is a glob of like 20 teams.
Yeah. All right, still to come. Goodman versus Gottlieb. We're going to give you our early candidates for National Coach of the Year, and a few of them might surprise you. That's next. All right, welcome back. Goodman versus Gottlieb, Monday afternoon. Again, we're on every single day for the rest of the year, 1 to 1:30 Eastern, here on Stadium. Make sure you send us any questions. We'll try to get to them over the course of the week. But now it is time to unveil our top 3 Coach of the Year candidates. And this can change quickly. It does change quickly, trust me. Who is atop the list on January 15th will not be atop the list on February 1st, most likely. Things change quickly when you get into conference play. And I'm going to start with you, Doug, because I've seen your list, and it's intriguing. You have 3 names that are completely different than my 3, and I like this a lot, to be honest. I hate to admit it, but I like it.
Okay, let me start with Hubert Davis at North Carolina. And I mentioned earlier that they're top 5 in defensive efficiency. So that's very un-Carolina-like in terms of how they traditionally play. But it's also more, that thing was a mess last year. Was a complete mess. And there were plenty of people, Carolina people, like, are we sure Hubert knows what he's doing? And he goes out in the portal, gets a couple really good players. Okay. Then he gets the top-rated point guard in the 24 class to reclassify, plays him. I'm talking about Ellie Cadeau, and they're terrific. Okay, I don't know if they win a national title or not, but they're playing good basketball. They're playing together. They're playing excellent defense, and they're doing it really without Cormac Ryan exploding as a shooter. And Elliot Cadeau still kind of feeling out his own way as a scorer. He's struggling from the free throw line. Like, so you're not as efficient offensively as I think you're going to be in February and into March. So let's start with Hubert Davis. Next one would be Porter Moser. And I know they've taken a couple L's here in Big 12 play. But again, it was bad at Oklahoma, bad. And everyone thought he's trying to get out. You know, they're going to the SEC next year. He's really not built to be that type of coach. He's a culture builder. They play pack line defense, but he's changed how they play defensively. Also went out to the portal, almost a new team. Now his point guard and his center were there last year. Outside of that, basically a whole new team. And they're not top 10 good, even though they were in the top 10 last week, but they're top 25. And you got to give Porter. Plus, he's playing differently, coaching differently than he's coached previously. That personal evolution out of necessity is important. And then the last one is TJ Altenberger. They're incredible. They're top 5 defensively, tremendous rebounding team. And they're not a huge spender in NIL. What I've been told is everybody kind of makes about the same. It's good, solid money, but it's about the same. But it's got a tremendous point guard who's really, really tough. And they just score enough points to win. And, you know, the Houston win's the perfect example of it. That's a game of toughness, played in the 50s. And Iowa State, you look back historically when Fred was there and they had it going, when Floyd was there and they had it going, when Larry Eustace was there. Like, they were good defensively, but really explosive offensive teams. This one's not, and they're still really good. And it was hard to tell because they didn't play a tremendous out-of-conference schedule. But I think Otts is a guy that should receive consideration because of how they're playing, okay, because of where their budget is, because of how they can be successful within the framework of their players.
And you and I are on the same page as I give my 3 guys who have exceeded expectations. Anybody can pick Matt Painter, Danny Hurley, and they've done a great job, all of them, right? Like, all those guys that sit atop the poll right now have done a heck of a job. But to me, it's more about the guys that have exceeded expectations. I think Bruce Pearl heads my list.
Yeah.
Auburn was not a preseason top 25 team. You know, don't have pros on their team. They bring in another young, small point guard, Aiden Holloway, who I really like, but I was unsure if he could run the team. You know, Joni Broom's been terrific this year. He's gone to the portal. And listen, Bruce can coach, man. He can, you know, he gets his kids to play hard. That's the number one thing. But Bruce can really, really coach. And now Auburn's in the mix for SEC, you know, contenders. Mark Pope, BYU. Boy, I thought they'd be an afterthought within the Big 12 this year. And instead, he's got them. The metrics love them. They're in the top 10. They're guarding this year. So Mark Pope's done a great job. And I'll stay in the state of Utah. Utah State, Danny Sprinkle goes from Montana State, took him to the NCAA tournament, gets the job. Everybody leaves through the portal, brings a couple guys with him from Montana State. Great Asamoah, Darius Brown III. And they have the longest winning streak in the entire country. and are in the mix for an NCAA tournament bid. All right, Villanova Marquette. Best game.
Hold on. You're burying the lead.
Yeah.
You're burying the lead.
All right,
okay, you're burying the lead.
Go ahead.
Here's how good a dude Danny Sprinkle is. Right?
Yeah.
You and I have known each other how long?
15 years, 20 years, 20 years.
Probably 20. Okay. Danny Sprinkle, he texted me happy birthday this morning. You didn't. He didn't. He's just more on it than you are. That's just the difference.
Wow.
Nothing from you. Crickets. No, now it's like
birthday,
now it's like
Douglas.
asking. No. It's okay. We're good. We're good.
All right, quick, 30 seconds. Villanova Marquette. This is a big one. Tyler Kolek, as I said, has been terrible. Who wins this game? Villanova Marquette.
I like Nova. I know that Nova doesn't have a point guard, but Tyler Kolek is really, really struggling. And this is one of those Nova needs it to solidify themselves as an NCAA tournament team. I like Nova in it, but Kolek's in a slump. It's hard to get out of a slump, especially when you're playing in the Big East and everyone knows what you do and you're scouted so well. He hasn't been able to throw it in the ocean. He's been shooting like me.
I think he'll break out of his slump against a team, like you said, Villanova, that doesn't have high level point guard play, but he's got to get going. Obviously, Cam Jones has got to get going for Marquette. They've certainly fallen off at this point. And Villanova, as you said, this is a big one for them if they can get it and keep momentum. All right, listen, happy birthday, Douglas. I am sorry. Happy 55th birthday. And I hope you get some great gifts today, and we'll see you tomorrow. Goodman versus Gottlieb, 1 o'clock Eastern here on Stadium.